Good morning, everyone. This is Christopher D. Bright. Welcome to the Family and Provider Information Committee. The time is now 10 a.m. We'd like to start. Forgive me if my camera is coming on a little slowly, but as you know, weather is always likes to keep everything cold today. As you're aware that the closed caption is now on, and the recording of this minutes are also now available. So please remind everyone, the reason why I said mute, please, so one person speaks at a time. Before we introduce our co-chairs, I need to remind everyone housekeeping rules as well. So please, everyone, as a reminder, to please follow the housekeeping rules procedure. It is important that we do follow that procedure. As you see on the computer here, there is a microphone. Microphones are muted. Your camera is on or off is your choice. Please also remember that you see a number of participants. That could be 10 or going up right now. So numbers, not to worry. The chat box is also available as well. The chat box, if you have questions, which we hope you all do have questions, because we are going to challenge questions today as well to everyone. So please make sure that you have a question, put also 1 on the chat, or 2, raise your hand. If you're on a tablet, please put it on the chat and say, I have a question. So therefore, we can see everyone to make sure that we count everyone who has a question for our speaker today on this. And also very important, please do not interrupt in the meetings. I will remind that, as Joyce Lemon has made this very clear, anyone interrupts in this meeting will be asked to leave and cannot come back on. It's been tested today. This is why Deborah's name is on my name. For example, please, as a courtesy today, as our speaker is speaking, we ask you, if you have a serious question, please put that in the chat as the courtesy. We do have a schedule. We like to make sure we finish on time and end on time. So please have the courtesy in the meetings also. And to remind everyone, the mute button is available. If you're not going to use the mute button, I will remind everyone that I will mute you automatically. We have to have one person at a time speaking. So please, let's have the courtesy to them as well. It is my greatest honor to introduce our co-chairs for the councils. For provider co-chair, Rose Sal, and parent co-chair, Deborah Greif. Rose?
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm glad you all are here and able to make it to this Family and Provider Information Committee. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Chris, for being here today with us, Chris Trevor. I want to pass it on to my co-host as well, introduce Deborah Greif.
Good morning, Rose. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. This is a wonderful day today because we were able to get Chris Trevor, who used to be with AHRC as their education advocate. And Chris and I go way back, and I thank Chris for many things, especially helping me learn the right way to advocate with when it was then the New York City Board of Education. Sorry, and now the Department of Education. Chris Trevor now works for the IAC, Interagency Council, and he's their education advocate. If I said his title wrong, I apologize. But I'm very proud that we're going to have him today because not just parents have questions, also I know a lot of professionals have the questions too. And since the Department of Ed keeps making changes that can affect our families, especially with the virus, COVID-19, Omicron variant, and also changes in how a partial hearing is done, I thought the best person to invite would be Chris Trevor. So with that, Christopher, you see Chris ready? Because I'm introducing him, and now it's his turn to take over and speak. Thank you.
Sure. So thank you very much for inviting me. I certainly will try to provide some useful information today for families. Let me just make sure I can share my screen. So let's see what happens here.
Chris, this is Chris. It's ready for you.
Okay. So let me just see. Okay. Okay, so you can see my screen?
Yes, we can, Chris.
Okay. So what I hope to do is to kind of today give you some idea in regards to understanding how you can be an effective advocate for your children. Chris and Deborah asked me to tailor this to families, so that's kind of the slides in the presentation, and I will share it with Chris and he can share it with you. I was still working on it just a little while ago. So I think there are some really key things you need to know. If you're going to be able to be effective in terms of advocating for children, you have to understand the federal law. If you don't, you're at a massive disadvantage. It's the foundation for all of this. And I'm going to help you prepare for an IEP, what you should expect to happen. And then kind of I have things I call doing your homework and your ABCs. And those two things I think really outline and help parents sort of figure out how to prepare and how to strategize for meetings. So the first thing I think that's really important is understanding the federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This act was enacted almost 50 years ago, 47 years ago in 1975. And the act has very specific requirements in the law. And it is authorized by Congress and signed by the President of the United States. It was last reauthorized in 2004, so it's been a while since there's been reauthorization. But I think it's important to understand that before 1975 in the United States, children with disabilities were not legally entitled to an education. And it was in 1975 that Congress realized that there were many children that were not being educated properly simply because they had a disability. And the idea that if I was a parent and I had two children, one child who did not have a disability and one child who did, my child who didn't have a disability could go to my neighborhood school and be educated. If I brought my child with a disability to that neighborhood school, I didn't necessarily have a guaranteed right that my daughter, for example, would be educated properly and receive appropriate education. And in 1975, Congress changed that. And the act, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA is what most people refer to it, is that it basically says, and this is just really kind of a synopsis, to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free and appropriate public education that meets their unique needs and that prepares them for either further education, employment, or independent living. It's important to keep all of that in mind because when you advocate, you're advocating using those words and you're advocating using those terms. The unique need, it means it's your child. It's your child needs. It's not the needs that a school district puts together to serve all the children who might have autism spectrum disorder. That's not what the law says. The law says it's specific to your individual son or your individual daughter. Sorry. So there are some terms that you really need to understand as parents in order to be able to effectively advocate for your children. And one of them is the language in the beginning where it says every child, regardless of disability, is entitled to a free and appropriate public education. Free meaning that the public schools or a local school district cannot charge you 1 penny for the education of your child if they determine your child needs those services and they're written onto an IEP. And I have advocated over the years for children to receive very specialized services based on their individual needs. When I was at AHRC of New York City as the Director of Advocacy Services, I was able to get children who needed it based on their needs, residential school settings that cost a lot of money. Parents didn't pay a penny because the law guaranteed them the right to have a free and appropriate public education for their child. The real word, though, that as a parent you should understand, or as an advocate, if you're going to a meeting, is the word appropriate. Public education, you kind of get, right? Every single child in all of our schools is considered a publicly funded child. A child that goes to a special education preschool program operated by a nonprofit preschool provider is a public school child. They're publicly funded, just like a child who goes to a specialized non-public school like an 853 school. Those children are considered publicly funded kids. The issue that becomes the question all the time that parents are struggling to try to figure out, because most times the school district will say, all we have to do is offer your child an appropriate education. The law never defined appropriate. And so this is what it says in the language, in the body of the law, that free appropriate public education is required by the Act, and it's tailored to meet the needs of the children. Now, some of the language, the handicapped child language, goes back to 1975, and some of it hasn't been completely updated. But the real key in this language is it requires that every single child who gets services under IDEA must have an individualized education program. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But individualized, you just take that word away and you put your son or your daughter's name. It's their IEP. It's not an IEP that's written for every 5-year-old in New York City. It's an IEP that's written specifically for your child. And there you go. The law requires that an individualized education plan be developed and that it must be reviewed every single year. It's required by the law. It's not an option. So the word appropriate has been defined for many, many years by the United States Supreme Court. A parent took their daughter's case, Amy Rowley. They took their daughter's case all the way before the United States Supreme Court. And in 1982, under the Rowley Court decision, Supreme Court said that an education, in order to meet the burden of proof under federal law, must be reasonably calculated to provide educational benefit to the child. However, what did that mean? Reasonably calculated really says it's based on something. It's not just someone's opinion. It's based on evaluations. It's based on the educational record of a child to determine what it is that they need. So it's not okay for a school district to just say, we believe this is going to benefit your child without some documentation, some evidence, some rationale for why they say that. And that had been the law of the land for many, many years. Educational benefit, basically, according to the definition before the recent Supreme Court case, which I'll talk about in a moment, basically said if a child made any kind of progress, it was appropriate. There was no sort of standard by which you evaluated how much was enough progress for a child. Every case that I took before an impartial hearing office, every case that I went to an IEP, I probably attended thousands of IEP meetings in the 20 plus years that I was doing work with with AHRC of New York City. And I did more than 100 impartial hearings. I represented parents. The majority of all of those cases came down to what was an appropriate education for a child. So in 2017, a family from Arizona took a case before the United States Supreme Court. They went all the way through due process and they went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court had to decide whether or not the service being provided to the child by the offered to the family from the school district was sufficient to meet the burden in the law, meaning, was it reasonably calculated? Did it provide enough progress for the student or potential for the student for them to be able to be given an appropriate education. So the Supreme Court had to answer the question. They had to go back and evaluate, is that enough? The original Rowley decision said, just any kind of progress was enough. And the Supreme Court in 2017 unanimously, think about that, unanimously. Does anybody vote unanimously? Supreme Court never votes unanimously. Supreme Court ruled that a school must offer an IEP reasonably calculated to enable the child to make progress appropriate to their circumstance. Big change, appropriate to their circumstance. So no longer was progress measured just simply because, the child could do something that they couldn't do 6 months ago, even if it was a very small thing. Now they're saying it's based on the child. It's based on evaluations. It's based on their potential of achievement. It's a big difference. And the Supreme Court in 2017 also said that the essential function of an IEP is to set out a plan for pursuing academic and functional advancement. Just so you guys know, I can't see everybody else. I just see kind of my screen. So if there's any questions or anything, Chris, just jump in or let me know.
We'll wait till the end.
Okay, very good. You can hear me. You can still see the slides. Everything's good.
Just the only thing you don't have it on. You don't have it on the big screen. It's only on the small screen. You didn't put on the from beginning.
We only have. I can only see advocating at the IEP meeting. Now I see it. Thank you.
Oh, it's not advancing?
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. You had to click it on.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yep, all good now.
Yeah, it now says about the Rowley Court determined. Is that what you were up
sorry,
to?
you could have interrupted me.
Sorry.
That's
okay.
I
never like to interrupt you. You're so great. I can't understand. I have to listen to everything.
No, that's okay.
All right.
So the Rowley Court, and this is the other thing, just for parents and advocates to know. So there is a real emphasis still on the issue of compliance, meaning an IEP has to be reviewed by law once a year. That means that a group of people have to come together, review the IEP, meet with you as parents, and then evaluate, is the IEP still providing an appropriate education to the child, to your child? And they really should be able to show you a measure. They should be able to show you some progress. I've been to too many IEP meetings where the first question I always ask a teacher usually is, what areas, what goals on the IEP has the child met? Can you tell me, how they are moving in a direction to achieve all of these goals? How far did they get? Where are they at? And if a teacher can't answer those questions for you, then I would question whether or not your child is receiving an appropriate education, because the IEP is the core element. It's the main driving factor behind the educational services your child is getting. Everything that is provided to them should be based on that document. That's how Congress determined the importance of this document. And in fact, the Supreme Court in 2017, like I said here, states the essential function of an IEP is to set out a plan for pursuing academic and functional advancement. So the IEP is so critically important, even though I know it is not treated that way in many cases. It's kind of just a recycled document, sad to say, in some cases, where many of the goals and everything on the IEP is just sort of the same from year to year, but it should not be. And part of my hope in terms of doing some of this training for you is to help you make sure that that doesn't happen. The other piece that the court has held consistently is that the local education agency and not the courts should determine really the educational services for a child. The courts don't want to weigh in on this stuff. They would like the parent and the school district or the school to be able to come to an agreement and determine what's in the best interest of a child. That's the ideal goal. It's not to have this mistrust or disagreement. The idea is that you hopefully will be able to come to an agreement and determine what you both think is in the best interest of a child. That doesn't always happen. That's why parents need to get advocates to help them. And then the other element that's in the federal law is that it entitles all children under the law to be placed in the least restrictive environment. Least restrictive environment basically is a whole bunch of stuff. It is determined first and foremost, though, back to the beginning. When I told you that Congress developed this law, they developed the law so that a parent who has a child with a disability could bring their child to the neighborhood school and have their child get educated just like every other child. However, when there was no system in place, so many school districts had to develop specialized settings, specialized programs, because not every school needed those things. And so it became a place initially. But Congress never envisioned it to be a place, it's a service. And so the way I tell parents, it should be almost like an a la carte menu. Your child can go to a regular class if that's what you want, and they should be able to get all of the services from a special education teacher, their related services, all the things they need in a regular class, if it's appropriate, meaning that if they can be educated and if they can learn in that setting. Maybe there's too many kids, maybe they need a smaller class. But least restrictive environment, the easy way to remember it is your child shouldn't have more special education than what they need to make progress and learn. So if you want your child to be in a more integrated setting, the law supports that. But again, it has to be the right setting. It has to be able to provide your child with progress. A school district can tell you, or New York City can tell you, they think your child would do okay in a regular class. But keep in mind that there's a lot of kids in that regular class, more than what they would get in a small class. And you want to make sure that they're going to make progress and they're going to do okay. You could put almost any child into a regular class. That doesn't mean it's appropriate. So appropriate comes before least restrictive environment in the language in the law. It's an appropriate, free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. So always keep that in mind. It has to be appropriate. It has to meet the needs of your child. And then the law also spells out rights that parents have. Congress knew that if they were going to allow school districts to place children in separate settings or small classes or separate schools because they needed that in order to be educated and learn, they also wanted to ensure that you as parents had a certain set of rights that protected you, protected your child, and gave you options should you disagree. The first set of rights, and New York State has a whole set of rights on the state ed website. New York City DOE, I think, has it on one of the parent information pages. It has all of the due process rights for parents and families. It's many, many pages long. But I summarize them into sort of these snapshots. So one is you have a right to be informed and knowledgeable about all actions taken on behalf of your children. How do you become informed and knowledgeable? Basically, you have to get all of the reports, everything that's written on your child you should know about. And if the Department of Education wants to change something, they want to change something on an IEP, they want to change your child's placement, they want to reduce the number of services your child gets, they have to notify you of that, and they have to invite you to a meeting. But I think it's really important to understand, to be knowledgeable and informed, the only way to do that is to request copies of all of your child's evaluations, make sure you have the IEPs. You want to know what's going on. You have a right to, under federal law, they're your children. You should know what is being provided to them. You should know what the school district may want to change in a service model to your child. And then you have a right to participate in all meetings regarding evaluations and placement. Any decision to change services on an IEP has to be done in a meeting with you or get your consent. The school district, New York City, cannot change something on your child's IEP without either having a meeting with you and amending or changing the IEP, or speaking to you over the phone and getting your written consent to make that change. If you are concerned about your child's progress, how they're doing, other things in the school, you're concerned they're not getting services that you thought they were supposed to get that were on the IEP, you have a right to ask for a meeting. You always have a right to ask for a meeting. You put everything in writing. You never take a phone call as guaranteed documentation of anything, because someone will say, I don't remember speaking to you. At an impartial hearing, I always wanted to produce a letter. I wanted to produce documentation that showed I spoke to this person. I told them in the letter, if something I said in this letter, that was one of the advocacy tips that I use all the time, I still do. If I send a letter to anyone in government, I will put at the bottom, please advise me if anything in this letter is incorrect or inaccurate or whatever I'm writing about. If I'm writing to a school and the teacher has told you your child's going to get speech therapy 3 times a week now because they weren't getting it 3 weeks ago, but now they are, you put it in writing and you say, thank you, Mrs. So-and-so. I appreciate you providing me with the notification that my child will be receiving speech 3 times a week. My understanding is that it will be starting as of Monday, January 17th, as per the IEP. At the bottom of it, if you say, please get back to me immediately if anything in this letter is incorrect, and they don't get back to you, you can use that as justification to say, I informed the school district, I gave them the option to tell me this was incorrect information. They never contacted me. Therefore, I went forward. I believe that this was going to be provided. It's strong documentation that you can use. Your consent is required to any evaluation and placement. New York City DOE cannot evaluate your child without your written permission. And I always tell a parent, if they're asking you for permission to evaluate your child, something is changing. Either they're going to change the IEP, they're going to change your child's placement, or they have some concern. That request for a new evaluation or something else should not come as a surprise to you. You should have been informed. There should have been a meeting. There should have been something in terms of telling you what's going on so you understand that. And then you have a right to challenge. You can disagree with anything. You can disagree with your child's classification, the name they give to your child's disability on the IEP. You can disagree with the level of service, the frequency of service. You can disagree with the placement. But with all of these rights come responsibilities. And that's what I always tell parents, that there's rights and then you have responsibilities to help enforce them. Don't assume that anyone's going to protect your child's rights or your rights except you. Because at the end of the day, sometimes that happens. So you can challenge those things. You can ask for another meeting. You can ask for a due process. You can go to mediation. You can have a resolution session. You can go to an impartial hearing. There's a whole bunch of options you have, so you don't have to agree. And then you have rights. You can bring anybody you want to an IEP meeting. As long as they're knowledgeable and they have expertise about your child, you can bring them. I used to go to meetings and the parent would have to say, Mr. Trieber is coming with me. I would usually ask them, and Deborah knows that, to tell them I'm coming, because I thought that was a mutual agreement with the school district. I didn't want to surprise anybody. I didn't mind if they knew I was coming. They were probably better prepared, maybe actually read the reports, and we had a better dialogue. The time and location should be mutually convenient to the parent. They're required to try to make the meeting fit your schedule. The district is required to document how they reached out to try to get you to attend. At the end of the day, the district makes the final decision. That's the way the law is written. But you have a right to challenge. So when is a student considered eligible for special education? You have to meet these 3 criteria. So a student has to have 1 or more of the 13 disabling conditions, and I'll show you those. Student is not making effective progress in school, and the student requires special education to make that progress. These are the 13 categories under federal law. Those are the only categories that the New York City Department of Education at this point can write onto an IEP. These are not medical diagnoses. I always tell parents that. So it's not a medical diagnosis. However, for the school district, usually in New York City, to put autism on an IEP, you usually have to have a documentation from a doctor that says the child has autism. They usually will not put it on without that. A concrete evaluation, they require it. I have 3 listed in red because there's certain criteria. So number 5 for emotional disturbance, that's the classification right now. There's consideration to change it because the language has really been a negative impact on children. And we believe that they should change it. So we're hoping that they're going to change it to something that's more reflective of an emotional disability. We'll see what they come up with. However, right now in New York State, if a child is classified as having an emotional disturbance, quote unquote, emotionally disabled, there can be no other condition, no other reason why the child isn't learning. So if your child has a learning disability, New York State really has in the regulations language that says that they shouldn't be classified as being emotionally disturbed. They're having a learning disability that's causing some emotional issues. There's a difference. And intellectual disability requires testing. That's very rarely used anymore. But those are the conditions. So you'll notice like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that's not there. And there are others, PDD, pervasive developmental disorder. There are others that are not there. The Committee on Special Ed or Preschool Special Ed, the Committee on Special Ed has to fit your child into one of those categories. A preschool student is a preschool student with a disability. That's it. There is no other classification for a preschool student. So the IEP. So I think I've said this to you. It must be developed for each child. It's specific to your child, and it must be reviewed annually. And then these are some specifics. Like I said, I'm going to share this with you. I don't know time frame. I don't know when I started, so I'm not sure how long I have. But there has to be statements of
Excuse me, Chris, you have enough time. Keep going.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So there has to be statements. So the IEP is developed as part of a team. So, and again, everything I'm telling you was part of what Congress envisioned this to be. So I'm not making this stuff up. This is what was required, what was envisioned by the development of the original federal law in 1975, that there would be a team of people. So a representative from the school district, your child's teacher, you as the parent would all get together. Sometimes it's just you and the teacher, and you would help develop this document. But what's really happened is usually you go into a meeting, the IEP is fully prepared, and the teacher may or may not go over the whole document. They may just go over pieces of it. Honestly, it really depends on you and how much you question or you push back and say, can you please go through the goals? I'd like to understand. Remember, as a parent, if you don't understand something, you have a right to ask someone to explain it to you. It's their job. They're not being nice to you. They're required to tell you if they write a goal that you don't understand. Because again, the only way you can hold people accountable for your child's education is to understand the goals on that IEP. And when you go into meetings, you ask. If you go in and you say, how is my child doing on this goal? And you cite it chapter and verse, they're going to see you very differently than most of the other parents they deal with. And that's not fair. That's reality. because you attended this, you're going to be armed with a lot of skills and ideas that most parents don't have. And I can tell you from the years of doing this that parents tell me so much of this stuff works, that it makes a difference for their children. And that's why I always do some of these trainings, not as much anymore because of my new role, but I used to do hundreds and hundreds of them and train thousands of parents every year. So there's statements about annual goals, long-term and short-term objectives, depending on your individual child's needs. There should be projected dates of initiation of service, how long the IEP is going to last. And there should be criteria. How are they going to evaluate if your child made progress or not? And they also have to include statements about how much your child will participate in regular education programs with children who do not have disabilities, and it must be reviewed annually. How do you determine what services your child needs? It should be based on evaluations. It should be based on feedback from you as parents. You know, if your child is not able to effectively communicate and they don't have a goal on there to try to achieve that, you absolutely have a right to ask for that. Those goals should also be helpful for you in terms of a community. If your child ran out of your house, if they couldn't tell a police officer who they were, where they lived, that's not normal for a child of your child's age. That's not normal behavior. Most children should be able to do that, right? So if your child can't, there's a reason why that is necessary. Even in the school itself, your child should be able to, if they can, communicate in whatever way they need to. So if it's with a device, then they should have that device. They should have training to use that technology device. Technology devices have become so advanced that they can even put in a little girl's voice or a little boy's voice, so that your child using the device would be able to talk like all the other kids. It's important to stand your ground if you believe your child needs something, and make an argument for it. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes how you do that. But again, you are, as a parent, your child's best advocate. Everybody else, no matter how caring they may be, has a different agenda. And I know from doing this for all these years that many people in the New York City DOE are very supportive of children and families, but they also want to keep their job. They also want to make sure that their boss isn't going to come down on them. And so you have to think about giving them permission for what you want. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. And then the last thing I'm just going to mention to you, the services on an IEP and the recommendations can change from early intervention to preschool special ed to the committee on special ed, from first grade to third grade. What's appropriate in first grade may not be appropriate in third grade. So it's always important to keep in mind, is my child making progress this year? Maybe last year they did great. Maybe they had a great teacher. Maybe the curriculum worked for them. Maybe this year the work is harder. My child isn't doing so well. You have a right always, always, always to question, is this appropriate this year? Is my child doing okay this year with COVID, with possibly some form of remote instruction, and then going back and forth? How is your child doing now? Are they making progress? Are they doing okay? Again, constantly checking that. I covered that service is flexible. It should be based on the individual needs of the student, not what's available in your child's school. And that's always a challenge when you're dealing with such a large bureaucracy, when there's so many students and such a big system, but the law is specific to your child. And as parents, that's what you can do better than anybody else, is you can make sure that the services meet the needs of your child. You know your child better than anybody else. So I've developed over the years a set of things that I think parents can do in terms of strategizing for a meeting to be better, effective, in terms of going into a meeting, thinking about it. So one of the things I developed is I call this doing your homework. So if you do your homework and you remember your ABCs, you're gonna be really well prepared to go into an IEP meeting. So you want to have a game plan, and I'm going to talk about all of these things. You want to have a strategy. This is stuff that I used to do, and I'm teaching it to parents because I think it's important for you, and I'm teaching this to advocates and to care managers. I've done a lot of training. Understand that you got to have a strategy when you go into that meeting. If you go into that meeting and all you say is, I'm going to keep everything I have, and you don't think about all of the possibilities that could happen, you're at a huge disadvantage. You want to organize yourself. You want to have justifications for what you're asking. You want to manage the meeting. You want to have examples to support what you say. You want to try to find a win-win, give a little to get a little. Outcome, you want to know what you want. You got to have realistic goals, and you got to keep your child in mind. So the game plan, how do you determine a game plan? I have a picture in this slide of a chess board. I believe that this advocacy of working in terms of special ed advocacy is like a chess match. I train parents, I tell them that, because you have to think a few moves ahead. So if I go in and I want my child to continue to receive speech 3 times a week, but the school is telling me they're going to try to reduce it, what are my moves in terms of how I can argue that my child should continue to get that? How can I sort of change what I'm asking for? So, for example, my child is getting it 3 times a week individually. School is telling me my child is doing okay, but I don't believe my child can really talk in a group. They're not going to be able to be effective. They get nervous. Maybe their language isn't so clear. So what if I say, okay, I still would like my child to receive speech individually once a week still, because my child needs that really direct support from a speech therapist. But I agree that my child then can get speech in a group of 3 or a group of 2 the other 2 times. So you're sort of creating that win-win. You're giving the district something. They're getting to put your child into what would be considered less restrictive because it's not directly individual service. But you're still keeping the 3 times a week. So you're strategizing, you're thinking, you have a backup plan. You have to advocate and determine how you'll communicate during the meeting. If you have an advocate, you want to kind of know what's going on. If you're talking in a meeting like this, make sure you mute yourself when you're not speaking, because the camera may be on, your microphone may be on, and you could be saying things that you don't want to say. So it's always important to remember that. These are the things you need to know for every meeting. I used to say this to every parent I worked with. Need to know 3 things. I would love to get this. I can live with this. I will not accept this, and we will fight. If you know that, you at least are able to negotiate the meeting, and you can try to come up with some negotiated solutions so you don't necessarily have to go in and fight. You know, I'm asking for more service for my child. I'd love to get speech 5 times a week. They're going to tell you that's never going to happen. You're going to have to go to a hearing. But we can give you twice a week individually and once a week in a group. Can I live with that? If I can, that's fine. If they tell me they're going to take away my child's speech service and my child is not doing well in terms of being able to communicate, I will not accept that. And you can tell them I will fight you on that. That way, they also know what your bottom line is. It's always important to keep these 2 things in mind. You never want to burn a bridge because you may have to go back across it. You don't want to get somebody angry at you because that same person may be the person you're going to meet with the next day. For me, I was always very respectful of the people I met with because I always knew I may have to go back to that district, that administrator, on behalf of another family, another child. In your case, as a parent, you may have that principal in your child's building until your child is aging out of that school. You may have that special ed administrator at meetings with you for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. Always keep those things in mind. And remember, it's not personal. It's about your child. At the end of the day, you're there for your child. Everybody else is there for other reasons, no matter how sincere they are. I was a very effective advocate. I knew the child that I was representing was not my son or not my daughter. And the parent who was there had the right to tell me what they believed the child needed. I could educate them, I could give them information, but at the end of the day, it was the parent that decided. You have to be able to justify your position no matter what you're doing. I would never go into a meeting, I would never go into a hearing unless I had evidence and documentation to justify my position. All the written materials. If you need an independent evaluation, you get it. Never think that an evaluation that the New York City Department of Education does for your child is something you can use to defend your position. It's never going to work, because that evaluation is going to reflect what they believe the child needs. That's just reality. You want an independent evaluation. You want someone to basically back up and justify what you want. And your goal is in that final box there. Your goal is to give that administrator permission to give you what you are asking for. That's an important thing to think about. If you give them enough documentation, enough justification, you have a letter from your child's doctor, you have an independent evaluation, that's why you believe your child needs this service. I, as a preschool administrator or an administrator in the DOE, if I do that, if I give you what you want, my boss may tap me on the shoulder and say, well, why did you do that? And I can pull out the evaluation, and I can pull out the doctor's report, and I can pull out the letter from your child's pediatrician. I'm okay. I have justification to defend what I did. They're not going to do that unless you give them permission to give you what you're asking for. If you can't give enough documentation, you have to rethink your position. As a parent, you know more about your child than anybody else. You know everything about your child. You know, an evaluation is a snapshot in time, right? If I evaluate your child today, all I know is on January 12th of 2022, this is how your child reacted to the test that I gave them. This is what they did. This is how they spoke. This is how they interacted. I have a snapshot. That's what I have as an evaluator. You, however, as a parent, have the photo album. You have every picture. You know everything about your child from the time they were born until this time. You know all the progress. You know what worked. If they were in early intervention, you know what helped them. If they were in a preschool special education program, you know how the size of the class affected their ability to progress and learn. You know if they benefited from a 10-month or a 12-month program. You know all of that. Don't underestimate that knowledge. Don't underestimate how powerful that stuff is when you go into a meeting and you can assert that and you can say that. With all due respect, Miss So-and-so, you're reading a report that was done 2 weeks ago on my child. Did you know that my child was in this program before? Because they may already be thinking this is a new option. Your child may have been in that program already. So just remember that. And then when you manage the meeting, and this is what I always did, I always taught parents how to manage a meeting. You want to establish your role as the expert on your child. No one knows your child better. If you need to say that, you do. And I'll give you some tips in a minute about how to do that. At the meeting, you want to evaluate who's in charge, you know, who's there. And I always ask people to identify themselves. Most of these meetings, they never do. And I can tell you there are times when I walked into a meeting and there were 15 people sitting at a table. I had no idea who anybody was. And I'm there with one parent, myself and the parent. And, you know, I had no idea. And I was like, can we go around and introduce ourselves? It's just a simple thing. And you have a right as a parent to know who's in the meeting. You have a right to know who's there. Most of the time, and I'll tell you in a little bit, but write down their names and watch them write down their names. Ask them to spell their names for you. The minute you do all that stuff, people are going to sit up in their seat. They're going to pay much more attention to you because you can write a letter even to the chancellor and say, I didn't like the way this psychologist, Mrs. Jones, spoke to me. And I used to be so specific, like, oh, Adams, is that ADAMS? Like, I would make sure they knew that I knew who everybody was in that meeting. And I would say, oh, and you are the who? And how do you know the child? Like, do those things. Again, you do those things, I guarantee you, they're going to treat you very differently than the average parent that walked in the school that day. And that matters. And then you want to see who the decision maker is. For the most part, if you're at an IEP meeting, like a CSE meeting or a meeting with the district, it's usually an administrator or a school psychologist. At your child's school, many times it's the school psychologist, sometimes it's the teacher. It depends on what you're meeting about. And then just really quick, I'm going to run through this. How to effectively advocate at the IEP meeting. I developed this over a series of years. And these are things that I used to do, that I educated parents to do. Parents have educated me about some of these things in terms of their strategy, what they did. And so I incorporated it into this little snapshot. I will preface this by saying to you that as parents of children with disabilities, you should not have to do all this stuff. But the reality is that if you do, you will be treated very differently. And that's the goal here. The goal is to get your child what they need and to make sure that they're treated differently than all the other kids. And I'll give you a very simple example. You do some of this stuff and your child will be treated differently. And I'll give you an example. I'm a teacher in a classroom. Principal comes to me and says, you know what? Our speech therapist just went out on maternity leave. And you know what? I can't guarantee speech service to all the kids in your classroom. Are there any kids that I absolutely should give the speech service to? As the teacher, I am going to tell the principal the names of the kids who I know their parents going to call me tomorrow and ask why their son or their daughter didn't get that speech service. And it's a sad fact that there's going to be a set of families that I've never heard from. Those parents and those children obviously are legally entitled to the service, but they're not going to be my priority because human nature tells me I'm going to make sure that the parents and the children who get those services are the parents who are most involved and who are going to give me grief if they're not getting it. That's reality. And I think you have to understand some of that reality when you're dealing with a large bureaucracy. So again, check the date of your child's last IEP. It has to be rewritten every year. If it's not rewritten, they violated the law. If there's a meeting, plan to attend the meeting. Most of the meetings are not even attended. And at those meetings, they will make decisions about your children. All they have to do by federal law is invite you to a meeting. They don't have to say you need to be in the meeting before they have it. They can have it without you. If the date isn't convenient, I suggest you send a letter and you say, I really would like to be at this meeting, and you give them 3 alternative options. That way, if they have a meeting and you have that letter, you can nullify the results of that meeting. You could say, I made a request. I gave you 3 dates. You had a meeting without me. The law says I'm supposed to be in that room. You're supposed to try to accommodate me. What documentation do you have that you did that? Request copies of your child's evaluations and IEP. If you don't have it, get it. If you know new evaluations were done, if there's a triennial that happened, they did 3-year evaluations, ask for copies of all of it. If they don't give it to you, put it in writing and request it. Review the documents. Make sure everything that was discussed is on the paperwork. Prepare a list of questions for a meeting. I always did that. I went in with a set of questions that I wanted answered. And the reason it's so important is sometimes these meetings become crazy. They become really heated. And I used to go back to that list of questions before I left the room, and I would use it as a review, and I would make sure that all of my questions were answered. You as parents have a right to have a lot of questions. Professionals operate with the belief that if you don't ask a question, you understand what we're saying. That's not remotely true, but that's the reality of a professional. We just kind of believe that. If you need an interpreter, you have a right to ask for one in advance of the meeting. My advice always to a parent is bring someone who you trust to translate for you. I know some Spanish. I've sat in the meetings where someone was translating and there was this long dialogue, and then the interpreter from the school district gave the parent a 1-minute snapshot that didn't even reflect what was discussed. So I always tell a parent, if you can, bring your friend, bring a family member, bring somebody who can interpret for you. Bring a picture of your child to the meeting. I cannot tell you how powerful that is. Parents were the ones who told me they used to do that, and I incorporated it into this list. At the end of the day, every single person you meet with in a school, all of them, came to the field. They all wanted to work with kids. They all wanted to do what's right for children. However, over the years, they lose that perspective. It becomes about their job, it becomes about their pension. They want to retire. They try to do the best they can. I have huge respect for so many people in the DOE. They did so many things for kids that I worked with, but behind the scenes, they would tell me, go to a hearing, you're going to win. The documentation isn't in the file, whatever. But they couldn't do it publicly. They couldn't do it because they were afraid of their jobs. They honestly were worried about their jobs. But if you bring a picture of your child, all of a sudden they remember why they went into the field. And I've had some parents, I used to suggest to parents you buy one of those loose leaf binders at Staples or Home Depot, whatever, Office Max, whatever, that has a plastic sleeve in front. You get an 8x10 picture, you put it on the cover of that loose leaf binder, and you put all of your child's evaluations and IEPs inside of it. And then the best thing about that book is you can stand it up, and you can stand it up right on the table at the meeting, and your child is present. The other thing I've seen parents do is they bring a small picture of their child and they pass it around. You'd be amazed how quickly the environment in the room changes when professionals who really love children and want to do what's best for them start to see that it's about a child. Because what happens too often is it just becomes a paperwork exercise. They do it all the time, especially the IEP team meetings. Sometimes they meet nonstop all day, and they go from one meeting to the other, to the other, to the other. The minute you take out a picture of your child, it all now becomes about your child. They're more interested in listening to your child. Dress like a professional. I had a parent who said to me, she said, I treat my IEP meeting as a business meeting for my child. Once a year, I have a business meeting, and I go dressed like I'm going to an important meeting. It matters. It matters. It's not right. You shouldn't have to do it, but in reality, that's what matters. I used to wear a suit in the middle of the summer to the hottest districts with no air conditioning. And I'd be sitting across the table from someone who's wearing short sleeve shirt and shorts. They were intimidated by me. I did that for a reason. I did that because I wanted to do what was best for that child. And I was very effective. Be on time. Most of these school districts will start a meeting at 9 o'clock. If you're not there at 9 o'clock, they'll assume you're not coming. So I would put in my appointment books, I need to be there by 8:45 so that if I'm running late with a 15-minute window. With the subways the way they are, you got to leave yourself extra time. Be supportive to the team. You want to support them. Again, they're there to help your child. You want to give them that permission. You want to do that. Again, maintain an educational file on your child. Bring the picture. So that's that photo album. Ask questions if you don't understand anything. You have a right as a parent to understand what's going on, but again, treat people with mutual respect and listen to them. Don't accept a decision unless it's explained to you and you understand it. I think some of these I covered. Ask each person at the meeting to identify themselves, write their names down, bring copies of the evaluations and reports. It's always powerful when the district can't locate an evaluation, but you as the parent have a copy in your file and you can hand it to them. Hugely powerful. Take notes. I cannot tell you how important that one is. Many of you as parents know professionals have a yellow pad. They always take notes. We're always writing stuff down, right? You're wondering what we're writing down? Do the same thing to the people at meetings. I used to basically have a notebook with me. And even if I was writing my shopping list that day, everybody in that room was watching me because they didn't know what I was writing down. And I think as parents, you can do that same strategy. You can make people pay more attention to you. The idea is you want to be treated differently than every other parent that walks in that school that day. You want them to see you as the parent whose child should get everything they need. It's not fair, it's reality. And make sure that you don't sign anything unless you know what you're signing. No one should just hand you something and say, sign it. The only thing that you need to sign immediately at that moment is an emergency consent to treat your child in a hospital. That's the only thing you need to sign immediately. Treat IEP documents or other things as contracts. Look at them, take them home, and read them before you sign them. And then make sure that whatever was discussed at that meeting is on the document. Someone can say to you, oh, well, we were going to, we're considering giving your child speech 3 times a week, but on the document, there's only 1 time a week. It doesn't matter what they talk about. It only matters what's on that document. And you need to make sure you can justify everything. They're going to ask you for doctor's letters. You want special transportation, you're going to have a form filled out. You're going to have your doctor fill out that form. All of those things are required. And then after the meeting, you should get a copy of the IEP. If you disagree, you need to notify them. You need to have another meeting. You need to request a mediation, a due process hearing, go contact an advocate. Keep a copy of the IEP in your file. If you make that file book, just keep putting everything in there. Again, make sure the services that are listed are being provided. Don't ever call up the school and ask, is my child getting speech service? Because the person answering the phone is probably going to be a receptionist or a secretary. They're not going to go check. They're going to say, yeah, everybody in our school is getting services. We have speech service. What you should say is, I want to know if my child, giving your child's name, is getting the services mandated on their IEP. You list the IEP and you say, can you please check with my child's teacher? Or you ask the teacher themselves, not if they're getting it, when they're getting it. Is it possible for me, I mean, in COVID, not so much, but in the past, can I come up and observe a session? All of those things require someone to do some research to verify if your child is getting the service. They will never lie to you and tell you your child's getting it if they're not. But again, because they have so many kids, they may just say, yeah, every child in our school is getting this. Read the IEP and the goals listed on it. If you don't understand the goals, ask your child's teacher. That's their role. Many of them have written the IEP. So understand what the goals are so you can understand if your child is doing well or not. And again, if you have questions, talk to your child's teacher. Don't go over the teacher's head. Talk to the teacher first. Don't call the principal, because the principal is going to say, why didn't you talk to the teacher? And then the teacher's going to not be happy with you because you didn't talk to them first. And then the last point I always make to people is say thank you to people who have helped you. The simple gesture matters more than you can ever imagine as a parent. If you ask parents who are savvy in school, they're the ones that bring up the cookies at the holidays. They're the ones that send a little thank you note if someone went out of the way to help them. I can tell you that people take those thank you notes, they put them over their desk. They will remember your child, and they will make sure that your child is treated the way that you want them to be treated. And again, this stuff is not fair. This is reality. When you're dealing with such a large system, the parents who are most active, the parents who ask questions, the parents who are involved and engaged are the parents whose children end up getting the better quality service, because it's just human nature. It's just reality. And my final point, believe in yourself. You are your child's best advocate. Don't let anyone say otherwise. At the end of the day, there's no one that cares more or that is more focused on your child at a meeting than you are. Everybody else has a competing agenda. Your only agenda is your child. And I think it's critically important that you remember that. Okay, I think that covers the presentation.
Chris, this is Chris. And
Yeah.
I love saying that to you. First of all,
So I was fast, so I covered it as quickly as I could. But I hope
covered.
it was,
I think you
helpful.
covered the kitchen sink without the strawberry on top.
Okay.
But let me start with our co-chairs first with questions. If anyone has a question, can you please raise your hand so I know who you are? Number one. Rose, do you have a question for Chris Krieber?
It's not a question, but I just want to comment. Chris, thank you so much. As I'm listening to you and I'm saying to myself, I don't know how many family members, or if we have any family member on the line, I wish that we did, because this information is so powerful that you just share. And I think a lot of our family members are going in this blindly, including myself. My son had speech and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had spoken to you before. but he's in general education. He's doing fine now, but it's so much information that you shared, and our family member, they don't know, they don't have these tools, right? And if they're not on this
Sure.
line, and I do hope their care manager is going to share it with them, this recording is going to be posted, it's going to be shared over and over with family members, because they need the tools. They need these tools to go in there and be able to advocate for their children. And I was tearful at one point. I'm like, wow, this is when you talk about having a picture, of your child, when you're having this meeting, so your child could be represented. It's powerful. And I think every parent who's going to be listening to this recording are going to be prepared and be able to really advocate for their child. Thank you so much for this presentation. We have to do it again. I think it has to be in almost every council meeting that we have. We'll share it, but hearing you talking about it and how passionate you are in talking about it, it comes to life. And I think family member will be so grateful to keep hearing you talking about this, and until they are equipped with the tools that they need to advocate for their children. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Rose. I mean, I think what you said is exactly true. I know a lot about this because I was doing this for so long. And what I used to tell families all the time is, they were like, "Oh, you're such an expert." I was like, "It matters nothing what I know. My role is to give this information to parents so that you can effectively advocate for your kids. There aren't enough advocates out there." And I believe that every parent can be very effective. And I think part of it is sort of these kind of common sense things that you wouldn't think about. Like I said, bringing a picture of your child is so powerful. I saw it work. And then I heard from IEP meeting people and school districts that parents were coming in with these binders, and they were like, what are these binders with the pictures of their kids? And it really made a difference. And I think, you should do everything you can to make a difference for your child, to get where your child's entitled to, because this is a federal law. And I always think it's important to get parents angry, to start to realize that the federal law is being violated here. It's not like someone's doing you a favor by giving your child the services they need. Your child has a legal right to them.
Mm-hmm. And just one more thing, Chris, even getting a second opinion, right? I mean, I know I was fortunate enough to have the knowledge to be able to do that, to pay out of pocket to get an evaluation. But a lot of our family members, they can't, right? So whatever the HRC psychologists tell them, whatever they can get, that's what they're gonna get. They're not gonna get a second opinion, and it is really impactful for them to be able to go get that second opinion, right? But a lot of our family cannot afford it. So I think that's also a crucial point, is that how do we advocate for our family, that you have that right to get that second opinion, and how our care manager can assist them in getting that support, to go and get a second opinion, for their child.
Yep, absolutely.
Now it's my turn. First of all, Chris, thank you again. I'm going to ask my first important question.
Sure.
Aren't we, when we're there in person or even on the phone, aren't we supposed to all have our names put? We can sign our name onto page 2, because that shows that we just attended the meeting.
Yes, if they give you something to sign, it's really just an attendance document. It's not anything else. I also have told, I used to look at who was in the room, and I would make sure that they signed it. I would tell them I want lines put through all of the other blank spaces, because I know over time, doing this for so long, people signed those documents who weren't present in the room because they were required by law to be there.
True.
So that's why I think it's important. Yeah. So that's why I think it's important to make sure, if you do go and you ask people who they are and what position they are, you can write that down. You can have your own sort of documented notes that could be submitted later if you need to. You date it, you write it down, and there's your evidence about who was present in the room. If suddenly, an administrator's name appears on a document that they weren't present in the room.
Yeah, they did that to my son so many times at his high school, to the point where after a while, I can't say the names, they called me, but then I finally got there. I said, "Do you realize that I could go for an impartial hearing because you falsified that we talked?" I said, "Is that what you want?" And then they looked at me like, huh? I said, I'm being decent. I'm asking you to come back and talk to me for a minute, sign it in front of me. That's all. And I also told him, I pick his teachers that appear at his meeting. You can't just tell me this general ed teacher's coming in. No, this is my child and this is his. And I also trained my son how to sit in there because if there were issues, he was going to look in there and say, no, they didn't do this for me. No, they didn't do that. And they didn't like that at all.
Yep.
So but also, can you just touch quickly the role of the parent member? Because a lot of times I was a parent member. I had some psychologists that let me actually do what I legally was required and help the families. And then I had a few, which I can't say their name. I'll privately tell you, Chris, but that will not let the parent members even do what they're legally supposed to do. So if you could do that.
Sure. So a parent member is an option for families. So it used to be that a parent member was required to be at all of the IEP meetings. That's not required anymore. The law changed a few years ago. Regulations changed. But you as a parent can request that a parent member be there. I still believe that there should be a parent member there at the first IEP meeting for parents who are entering preschool. Because they need support, and that's the idea. But the real problem always was, if you're a parent member in a school district where your child goes, you're always, worried about what kind of retaliation or something else could happen, because those people who you're in a room with may later be deciding the services for your child. And so that's really where it became a challenge. But
Chris, hold on a second. I'm sorry to interrupt. Dolores, can you please mute yourself, please?
Sorry.
In terms of the role, a parent member is really there to be supportive to the parent, so that there's more, there's another parent in the room. But many school districts, like you said, Deborah, had parents, go get the coffee or make the copies.
Yeah.
And they never really were able to do what they wanted to. I used to talk to a lot of parent members who told me how frustrated they were that they weren't really able to do what they believe they were volunteering to do, which was help parents. So it's really not as effective as it used to be years ago. But a parent who's alone, knows they're going to go alone, does have a right to ask for a parent member to be present. They absolutely do.
Yeah, they do, and unfortunately, they also now have it. If it's after 5 years, you can't serve anymore when your child is left. The other thing is, are impartial hearings being done the same way because of what de Blasio did right before he left office?
So what Mayor de Blasio did is he moved the hearing offices to the oath office, the Office of Administrative Tribunal, which does all of the city hearings for like daycare and other things. I haven't heard yet, like sort of operationally what the hearing office looks like. I understand that they still are required. I mean, nothing has changed in terms of regulation, in terms of the way that they're supposed to operate it. The question that we do have right now is who is actually administering, who's overseeing the hearing itself. Is it still the impartial hearing officer? Is it the administrative judge who's now, who oversees the oath hearings? We don't know. I do know that Governor Hochul recently signed a law that we were pushing, that if a parent, and I don't know the exact timeframes, but if a parent had requested an impartial hearing, I think it might be more than 100 and something days. I forget. It's a certain amount of months, and the school district never convened the hearing, never had any decision or anything else. The hearing officer can be immediately appointed and basically give the parents what they were asking for. So we're waiting for guidance on the new law. It'll definitely come out from state ed. So that really is a positive thing. I always tell parents about impartial hearings, always remember that the burden of proof is not on you, it's on the school district. So the school district has to prove why whatever they recommended for your child or their action is legal, is justified under law. New York State is one of the only states that has the burden of proof on school districts. That was something that I was very heavily involved in to make sure that happened years ago. And I felt very strongly about that. And I still think it gives parents an advantage in terms of going into a hearing. So, I've told parents never be afraid to do a hearing if you have to, but I think it's really makes more sense to have a mediation first and try to resolve your disagreement with the school district, because an impartial hearing at the end of the day is all or nothing. Either you win or you lose. At mediation, usually you're going to get a negotiation. You're going to have a mediator trying to negotiate a settlement. And many parents don't go that route, but I think it's much more effective.
I want to thank you, Chris, because I really appreciate that how you do this. And yes, we are going to have you back again, but we're also going to do it where you get at least how long do you usually like to do? 1 hour or 2 hours?
It depends. I mean, I can do different things. I cut a lot of stuff from the slides to try to, keep it within the 45 minutes. So we can talk and we can figure out what would be best. But I'm always willing to talk to parents and to give them the tools that I believe will help them be more effective for their kids in terms of advocating. Because this is not easy. This is complicated stuff. And most of what I've given you is really probably based on 30 plus years of doing this work. I've been doing this a long time.
Yes, you have, Chris.
Yes, you have, Chris. And because of what your help, my son made it through. Thank you. Go ahead, Chris. Hold on up.
We have the hand raised, and we do have people with chat. I want to get to them.
Sure.
The hand raised was Usha. Can you unmute yourself?
Ursula, it's you.
Yes. Hi.
Sorry.
Hey,
And thank you so much, Chris. And I agree
You're
with everything what Rose said that I don't want to really repeat, but thank you. It's really great.
you're
And
welcome.
I have a question just based on your experience. In case of the wheelchair accessibility of the schools, because this is under less restrictive environment, if the parents would like to send the child to the home zone school or to school that the siblings goes, many of the buildings, they really don't have kind of like because of the structures and etc. But due to the technology, and if you go to the doctor's office and even the transportation museum, MTA, they have the lifts inside. They kind of put them, like a folding lifts and I think I hope you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
How to support the parents, to advocate that the buildings, even they have kind of excuse or because of the construction, because some of the buildings, the school buildings, they have elevators, like kind of service elevators that can be used. However, they have a stairs to enter the building. But in all those technology, the lifts, they can put outside lifts or kind of do ramp. Or you're thinking that this fight is kind of the watered, or really just trying direct the parents to go to the other school, but it's transportation time, it's the busing, and how to get the group because I think it's possible to solve in many buildings that they still have kind of excuse because of the old buildings or etc.
Yep. I mean, some buildings I think are really, really challenging for them in terms of trying to make accessible. I know Advocates for Children had been working on accessibility in the public schools, and that may be one avenue to talk to them about. Absolutely, I think a parent has a right to say, if I have two children, I want my child to go to the same school as their brother or sister. And it shouldn't be sufficient to say it's not accessible. They should try to do everything they can to make it accessible. I think, again, it probably depends on the school itself, because even when you look at the accessibility list that the public schools put out, some of them are accessible like first floor only. They don't have an elevator. They don't have a ramp internally. Some of them have accessibility only to certain parts of the school. So some of that, I think, is also important in the beginning when a parent wants to, when they talk to the parent about a child's placement, say from like into kindergarten. You want to make sure that that school is accessible. You want to have a discussion about this whole thing, because again, they know that I forget what the percent, like 20, I think it's like 20 something percent of the schools are accessible. The majority of them are not. And you're right in terms of saying a lot of it is, it's an old building, we can't make it accessible. Well, that's not necessarily the case anymore. There are ways to do that. So I think Advocates for Children would be a really good place to start, because like I said, I know that they were really very heavily involved in lobbying the city council to add more money in the budget. I think it was last year, the capital budget, to include funding to make more and more schools accessible.
Yeah, thank you. Because it's
You're
not only the people from the students for the wheelchair, but some they have a different issue of walking
Absolutely.
stairs.
And also parents should have accessibility to get into the building to have a meeting with the child's teacher. And
Yeah.
that's not the case either in many cases.
And when I was looking in the schools, they have sometimes two pair of the stairs, that one can be used for the putting the lift, the one that's like a folding lift. I mean, we have technology to really solve this. All right.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Chris, since no one else's hand has been up, but before I proceed with the chat, we do have a representative from Assemblywoman Mentel Frantes. His name is Anthony. Anthony, do you have a question for Chris Trieber?
No, I don't actually. And again, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to get on this call. I actually don't have any questions. The presentation was very well executed. Very well executed. I got a lot of information off of it.
Thank you.
Hi, Anthony. This is Deborah Greif, the co-chair of this committee, and my other hat. We'd appreciate if you bring back to Assemblywoman Francis. We would like for her to advocate and fight for funding to make more of these schools truly accessible, and even do what sometimes the Board of Election does. They get temporary ramps or folding ramps.
Okay.
If you can work with us so we can make more of the schools truly accessible. Thank you.
Okay. I'll definitely bring that to the attention.
Yeah. And Anthony, this is Chris again. If you have an announcement, we'll be doing that a little bit a while. We just want to make sure their questions are done first.
Okay, no problem. I'm here.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, let me move on back to the chat procedure. Okay, I appreciate, Ursula, you put your announcement. Thank you on the chat. To answer care design, and I will say this again, and every time in every meeting, all recordings are always available on our website when they come up, when I put them on. Now, for example, for the advisory outreach update, which was on last week, that is available on the outreach page. So, all the videos are always available on the Brooklyn DD Council's, joint meeting page. That's including, we'll have all videos from the past meetings since we started. And I mean all of them. So this one will be available once it's loaded and everything's set up. So I hope that answered your question. Yes, and I see the face, I see the mouth, so that's a good sign. Okay. Chris, we do have a question also did come on the chat, but I can't say the person's name. So they're asking for privacy. So there is a question about transportation that came up. And I know you and I know this answer. So I think this is a double header smackdown, double Chris time. That was from Tom. He told me to say that to you today. He was in the Bronx. Okay, and he's not going to remember, so I'm not worried. As you're aware that due to the fact of the COVID going on, there is a concern that some of the principals are not following the IEP procedure. The concern is are they allowed to go on Accessorize? That's number one. 2, are they allowed on an MTA bus? Which I think is kind of, this is not the first time I'm hearing this. But I think you and I know this answer together, but I always like a second opinion before I, go from the legendary to the next
Wow.
Chris. So just got to keep you a little smiley on
Well,
that.
I actually would defer to you, Chris, because I think you're more of an expert on these questions for sure. I know that there's significant challenges in terms of transportation. I deal with it almost on a daily basis with our preschool programs and our school age programs. A lot of the companies are having challenges staffing the buses with drivers and matrons, and they've had limited service at times. I think it's just important to make sure that a parent does contact OPT, gets a case number, and make sure that they're following up on whatever complaint it is, because the city council usually at one point ends up looking at all of the complaints, the volume of complaints. They look at the numbers and stuff. So it's important to make sure that you record all of those things. And I think in terms of the accessorizing the public transportation, Chris, I would defer to you in terms of the answers, because you absolutely are the expert.
Yeah, and I'm just now to add my piece of the puzzle. The answer is if a person has a PCA, personal care attendant, and it says yes, that means that person can go on. Yep. So last time when I said this to a parent, and I asked them, is it a bus? Yes. Does it have 4 wheels? Yes. Does your card say PCA saying yes? Yes. There's your answer. Yep. But if it says no, that's where the problem comes in, because that means they didn't get the full maximal service. Means everything. That means PCA's yes, which is care attendant. They get at least 5 years service, and they get transported where they have to go in the 5 boroughs. So say like if I want to go to Henry, all the way out in that boondocks, Queens, which I can say that is a boondocks, with a PCA, I could. If I have to go from there to say all the way out to the Bronx, I could. But always remember, must have $2.75. That's $2. That's $2 bills and 3/4. Must have the correct change. Now, if you're going to ask me if a guest can come with them, the answer is only 1 guest as of now. Not 2, not 3. Only a 1 additional. And they still have to pay the $2.75 by cash. Regarding Omni, that will be coming up soon for a test phase for Omni for the Accessorize. That will be announced in the next few months. So I hope that answered that question. I know I got a thank you on that, on not just 1 thank you, but 2 thank yous. Second question for you, Chris. Can you explain the partial hearing procedure? How can I fill it out?
You mean the impartial hearing?
Yes.
I believe that on the DOE website, there's a form that you complete. Usually most of it is just sort of general information about a child, but then it usually requires that you write down exactly, excuse me, what you're asking for, how you went about it. So, if you say on there that I'm requesting that my child receive increased speech service, then it might say, who did you contact and ask? What was the response? So you can say, I spoke to my child's teacher. I met with the IEP team. They told me that they didn't believe my child needed it, but I still believe they do. They might ask you for any kind of supporting documentation. You have to sign it. And usually you can send it back to the school district, the Committee on Special Ed. I believe you can probably also drop it at the school, and the school will forward it, because once it goes to the Department of Ed, they're supposed to process a impartial hearing request. And then normally what happens is it is logged in, and then typically someone will get back to the family. They may require, usually they require that you have a resolution session before you have the actual hearing to try to resolve it. And then after that, an impartial hearing officer would be assigned to the case, and then they would contact the parent.
The person said, "Thank you so much."
Okay.
That was the last question from there. Does anyone else have a question for Chris Trieber? Henry? And I don't speak mute mode. Henry, you're still muted, so I know you're dying to speak, but I don't hear anything.
I can't. Okay, here.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any questions. Usually, just a learning process for me. So I was listening and catching in all this nice information. Now I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Just want to make sure because I didn't want to say.
Yes.
So Chris, I'm sorry, Debbie and Rose, Sal, there is no more questions. I think 2 of those questions were cleared. We're good from this point. Anything else?
Well, Chris, you did as usual, did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank
yes,
you.
I really mean, once I started doing exactly how you outlined it, I got more services for my son the right way. But the funny thing was they used to complain about me, but then the year he was supposed to graduate, they started to get upset, his high school, because they said, maybe we should fudge his age so you could stay with us. Because I was actually one of their best advocates for the school. So
Yeah.
it shows they complain, but in reality, they like when you bring up things, because I really wasn't trying to hurt anybody. I just wanted
Nope.
my son to have the right service.
That's exactly right. At the end of the day, as long as your focus is your child, it doesn't become personal, you're respectful to the people who you're meeting with, they will have mutual respect for you. And you are an excellent advocate, Deborah. I think that people respected you. And I think that they understood that your only real focus was Chris. And
Sure.
I think because of that, they wanted to make sure that he did well and that they were able to give you what you were asking for.
Yes, I did. I only asked for what was legally correct.
Yep. We
And
had those discussions.
Yes, I did though do one time an impartial hearing, but actually my son's special ed principal messed up in her way because her facts weren't correct, and the hearing officer, when we went off, she took her off completely and turned around and said, I can't legally give you what you would like, but I see that your son needs a lot of help, and you look like you've been given a hard time. So because of that, they made sure he got all the technical help he need with a laptop, because I had 2 service coordinators with me. That's when they were called service coordinators. I'm not going backwards. This is what it was that day.
Yep.
And because I did that, and Chris was there, because after a certain age you can have your child, if they're capable, sit at the meeting.
Yep.
It went better than we thought, and my son's 2 former service coordinators and and Chris was fine with that.
Yep.
Because in one way I felt I really won, because we got what we were able to, because we were able to get what he needed, not what I want, but what he needed. And that's what I also tell everyone. It's not my child. It's not my service. It's his service.
Absolutely.
I thank you again, Chris, for all your help.
You're welcome. So like I said, I'm certainly, willing to come back and do another presentation. If you have other questions, you can certainly forward them to Chris, and I can always, Chris and Deborah, and I can always get back to them. And I will share the presentation. I just want to put it into like a PDF document.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It makes it
Chris.
easier.
So much.
Good seeing all of you. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Oh, Henry, first of all, Henry, I want to say Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
And I hope things are well there. Do you have any updates that you could possibly share if you know? If not, no, I understand either way, because I know all the changes that are coming through with OPWD. Everyone is like, oh, whoa, what's going on? But whatever you could update us, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, there are a million changes, but the question is which one? Where do I begin? Really, for this forum, I don't think there's anything in particular other than I think the only thing that is new this year was that just yesterday we had a statewide, actually, first time meeting with all the CCO executives in the whole state and the DDRO leadership from all across state. So we usually have one locally just with the region 4, but this was statewide. And it's the first time. So I think we're going to be doing it monthly. And there's an opportunity for us to hear from the CCOs, executive, and also address some issues and even update them on something, anything new. So there's no policy changes other than that. But I can't think of any right now other than that. But I think it's a positive step in the sense that now is a statewide kind of a meeting where we can really share information and see what's going on in other regions. But nothing, no policy-wise, nothing changed I'm aware of.
I thank you, Henry. I'm going to give a quick update before you ask any questions of Henry, but on the statewide advisory council, Margaret Puddington is no longer the chair. Our new chairperson his name is also Chris Pelagia.
What is going on with Chris? Is that
I don't know. They just love these names.
Everyone is a Chris.
Yeah, and he is from Region 1. Yes, he's a parent. His child lives at home. And we are working to update a lot of, we're working on the reimbursement program. We're also working on the family support service, the satisfaction surveys. We're working on to make sure we update bylaws and other, but we are working together because we want to make sure that the family support services are functioning well and that is as close to possible. They're similar across the state. We do understand that, because New York City has a separate fiscal year we are July 1st to June 30th, but once you leave, it's Nassau, Suffolk, and the rest of the state is April 1st to March 31st. So we understand that, but we are all working together. If I have any more updates, I will be very happy to share. And I think I see Doris Khan. You have a question?
Yes, I have a question. I'm Doris Khan, Outreach Coordinator for New York State Institute on Disability. I have a question for Henry.
Yes, go ahead.
It's not about policy, but it's more functional. When are they going to come out with a new directory of who's working at the DDRO and at OPWDD? I have here lists, and I know that they're outdated, and I'm trying to email people, and I don't have correct information. I understand there's revisions going on, but are they working on some new contact directory?
Now, when you said directory contact, is it for the whole Region 4 or just for a specific borough?
Both. Region 4 and Region 4.
And what date is on the one that you currently
Region
have?
and Brooklyn, yes.
What is there any date on the one that you currently have?
I believe it's from 2018 or 19. I have it.
Okay. I think the reason why is so now, I'm not sure if you're aware that we're now going into a functional supervision mode. In the past, where every borough had their own independent unit for service amendment for all the districts. Now we're going into a functional mode where we have a functional supervisor who is responsible for a group of people who does something.
I know that.
So I think we're still working on that, and I don't think it's final. So I believe it's at that point, once it's finalized, and then you're going to get that information. Giving it to you now is going to be, I think it's chaotic because I know things change, and we're still putting things into place. So once that is completed, I think that's going to be the directory to go with.
Okay, thank you.
And so you probably won't get anything by borough anymore. It's going to be a Region 4 wide directory with functional supervisors and the team. And then the phone numbers are going to be all over the place, because some will be in They're going to be in all
And
the
email
different districts.
addresses. Yeah,
Correct.
right.
So
Okay,
that's what you'll be looking out for, but I don't know when, but it's going to be out hopefully soon.
thank you.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have a question for Henry? If not, thank you, Henry. And please send my regards to everybody.
You're quite welcome. No problem.
And
Long time no see. Hope to see you soon.
yes, I hope to see you in person. So, and by the way, Mr. Greif is my PCA, so I can come all the way out there in those boondocks of Bernard Feinstein if I have to, or I can go
Careful,
to the Bronx.
Henry.
I can even go to the borders. So,
All
but
right.
I
Careful,
will
Henry.
at the
All right,
right
guys. I
time.
have to leave for
Yes,
another
we
meeting.
will come visit
All right.
at the right time. But thank you for
Take
being
care. Hi, Rose. Nice to see you
Bye.
again. Take care, all right?
Bye.
Okay.
Rose and Debbie, I'm here. It's just that someone is almost trying to hack our system, but I got the person out.
Well, I
Frozen.
appreciate that very much. So does Rose, right, Rose? Okay, you're freezing.
It
This
might be because they've been working on the power near downtown Brooklyn. Rose is still there, but I think the problem is the cameras are acting up.
Okay. Well,
So
is
right
any-
now, let me just make it clear for my report quickly so we can then do announcements. I know Matilda's person, Anthony, I know he had to go, but he left his information on the chat also. But I'll say this. Just to remind everyone that, as I said before, and I said this at the last week's meeting, they are going to be up right now. You should be checking your Zoom, your Ring Central, your everything. They're going to be updating a lot of the systems, so please check, make sure your systems are updated between the tablets, your computers, because if you don't, your system will slowly saying you're not cleaning it out. We've been seeing some people getting on the computer or meetings have not updated, and then all of a sudden their system will not work, like microphones,
Sorry.
cameras. I know, Rose, you're there. I can see you, Rose. I'm guessing there's a power surge. So
Yeah, I was
yeah,
frozen for a second for a while, and I tried to log back on, and I wasn't able to do so.
it's okay. As I was saying before, right now as we speak, as I said before, we are going to remind people to please make sure. That's why I have the instructions out. Please make sure you update your computer. Please make sure that you go to your settings and update them to keep them clean. And I'm talking about your personal. And agencies should be checking their systems as well, because we're in the year 2022, and some of them have not been in the office for a while. So I'm going to remind everyone, please check your software as well. Moving on to transit, just let everyone know that Mass Force will be on January 25th. That's available on the MTA's website. The vaccine information has been updated again for all different locations. If you need to take a COVID test, I suggest you please try to do it more on the inside, not the outside, because due to the cold weather, it can compromise the test. We've been getting, as Tom McAnally just mentioned it in another borough, and I know Chris is not here, but he'll bounce with me. They're not getting right results, and then we're finding out they don't have COVID. They're not really doing it correctly, and to me, with a lot of people outside, it may be too much. They need to think of spreading out like the Three Stooges. So I do want to remind everyone on that. And just to remind everyone, due to the shortness of drivers and conductors, there be some of the trains you may see running. They are running like normal routine, but some areas are been suspended. The B train will remain suspended for this week. The W train is suspended. The A train that's normally going to Rockaway Park Beach 116, that's like 6 A trains that go there. They are not going to be running. They will go still to Far Rockaway. So we will have additional A service there, as well as Lefferts Boulevard. Right now, we're reminding people, please get a mask for yourself or a face shield or something to cover your face. They were allowed to be used. And to remind everyone, if you ever need a mask, please go to the train station booths. At this time, they are available there as well. It is important to everyone that, yes, the trains do get cleaned at the terminal. For example, the Q gets cleaned at Stillwell Avenue. The F train does as well. They're actually going to be moving the F train cleaning crew to 179 because they will have more places and more easier to clean faster. But as a reminder, everyone, always carry additional masks with you. The masks are there for a reason. And just to remind everyone, I have received a lot of complaints about Accessorize App. And I need to be clear, I know it's the curb. As of right now, ACTA, which is the committee I'm on, is investigating it, as well as the AAR app that has been tested and being investigated, which I am the head leader on that. That is being checked. Right now, so far, it is working fine. I have not seen big issues, but there are some issues will be checked in the next for the next few days. We are updating that app. So Rose, so just to let you know, because one of your agencies did put a complaint in, it has been checked. And Victor Calisi and I met him last night. He agreed that there is some progress getting on it. It is working. But I remind people, please do not set up your appointment on the same time of your doctor's appointment. Give yourself an hour or a half hour additional time so you don't have to run like a maniac. And especially if you have to go to the bathroom, it is not healthy. We're reminding you that, please. And regarding the Omni, as I said before, Omni is still in the test phase for the reduced fare. Only the full Omni is available. So please make sure you are have fun with that. Now, the Metro card, the credit cards, and your Omni cards are available. You can use that at the gate. You can suck it in the machine, or if you have a credit card, tap it if you want to. Usha, you have your hand up.
Yes. Yes. I have a question to you, since you mentioned about the mask, and I have the issue. Maybe you can, I don't know if you can answer the question, because I have an issue with Accessorize drivers and bus drivers. My daughter is not willing to wear the mask, and I was researching that if the person is not able to remove the mask by itself, or it's not able to put the mask by itself, she's not required to wear the mask. And I have the very, many times I have issue with that. Do you know anything about it? Because the drivers, Accessorize drivers, the bus drivers, they don't want to really read of the paperwork that I have. This is regulation. Did you hear about it?
The regulation is stated, yes, you have it correctly as a paper note, but we're reminding you, they're going to still, that some of the drivers are supposed to be instructed on that. They are supposed to take the new regulation ruling that's in effect as of coming up. All crews from MTA, it doesn't matter what division you say, have to still take that training. Now, the only reason if you cannot wear a face mask, a face covering must be. A face shield is covered. That's including your mouth and nose during the bus. Now, I'll remind you, when the bus driver is in his seat and the shield is on, he can remove his mask because he's in the shield. Now, once he's coming off the bus, or the shield is, if he's helping a customer, he has to wear the mask, same way as any customer on the bus. That has been brought up last night.
But I'm talking about not the driver. I'm talking about my daughter.
Can your daughter, Ursula, can your daughter handle a face shield?
No.
Can she handle a very light?
No, I mean, this is out. I mean, like saying no.
Let me ask you my second question. Can she handle a very loose-fitting scarf?
No.
That looks like
no,
it's
we try it,
her?
and it's more dangerous for her. And I think it's not the one case. It's more dangerous for her.
Well, Ursula, in reference with your daughter,
but first, regulation.
Listen, what I'm saying. I know you have documentation. Did you send it to Accessorize? Did you personally? I'm asking you because.
No, but this is general.
No. That is the first issue. You need to make sure that medical documentation about your daughter not being able to wear the mask or the shield needs to be sent first to Accessorize, and then we'll find out who else needs to see it. Because once it's put in her profile, you will have better protection when you're scheduling the trip. It should be because before you can there's a problem. They need to have let me tell you something. I have asked for parents who have to have more than one child come with them. And I explained, and then I had it put in writing. In reference with your daughter, you have the medical documentation, and eligibility from Accessorize needs to have that in and have it constantly resent in there. When it comes to the buses, well, Chris will check with the accessibility chief to
The
see.
answer to that question, just to jump in,
Yeah.
the answer is once you have a note proving it, you show it to the driver. If the driver is going to be disrespectful and not going to follow the ADA regulation law or the safety law, all I can say is to the driver is get the vehicle number one, get the bus stop and the time, and put it into mymta.info/complaint. Once you put that in, the driver, as well as that document, as Debbie just said, have that document ready and copy and put in with the complaint. Therefore, the driver must follow that procedure, because this is not the only person. This is not the only person, and I did mention this in Manhattan the other month, that a doctor's note must be in. Now, if a person is has an asthma, and I'm going to repeat again, the nose can be open, but not the mouth, because if a person has severe asthma, and I'm going to say due to the cold weather right now, they do tell you can bring it down to breathe a little bit. Even the MTA police and transit police know about this, and they actually follow the same procedure, because I have spoken with Transit 34 and main headquarters, and so far, unless you have a severe asthma, yes, make sure you keep your asthma pump closer to your hand and your pocket at all times. But the letter you have must be shown between the bus driver on the bus as well as any staff along the MTA. But Accessorize, you must contact eligibility.
You should have that letter in eligibility. Why?
Anything new documents must come in.
Ursula.
Okay,
because
can I finish, please?
Chris, let me finish. If this was my daughter, they would have every division that my child travels on would get that. I would see that it's in the letter and the medical proof, and I would make sure I have it constantly updated. So they can't say, well, it's warm weather or it's cold. No, they're going to cancel it every few months. I would say to the doctor, rewrite the letter, update it, goes back there. Why? Because that also protects you. Because if that's on your record and they pull it up, like when I need to go on Accessorize and I need the bus and they bring me a small car after it's been medically shown, I can't handle that. That counts. So I understand. But Ursula, we understand your thing, but we do have to also move on for this reason. We have to see if anybody has announcements. But
there was a part question that I need to add in also.
Go ahead.
Just to remind everyone that the Accessorize vehicles, if you're seeing a problem with your curb and other things, please make sure that you please contact your Accessorize complaint division or go, as I said earlier, the MTA complaint on the website, because the reference number goes faster and keeps track. If you don't get an answer by 8 to 10 business days, this is where yes, Dolores, I know that, but I'm trying to finish. I'm getting interrupted. To please make sure you put those complaints in. Now, please, everyone, there are concerns, there are worries, but at the same time, we have to do our part. All right? I want to move on to announcements. I know Dolores Kong has an announcement, but she's dying to do it.
Doris, we can't hear you.
Oh, you want?
We don't. I don't.
I didn't. Okay. Hi, I'm Doris Kahn, Outreach Coordinator for New York State Institute on Disability. I want to thank this committee for inviting Chris Traber to have his presentation. I've been on both sides, a parent and a provider, and even though I knew a lot of the things he said, I found the information very valuable and very correct, and will support families and their children. And we could have him talk at every meeting, because we need to have that reminder of what our responsibilities as advocates have to be. I have a few announcements for New York State Institute on Disability. We have funds available immediately for reimbursement. That's for services, goods, and CAM. And for information on that, contact Jackie Tripodi at 929-202-1115 or email jtripodi@nysidinc.org. We also have openings for evaluation for non-Medicaid individuals for the purpose of obtaining OPWDD eligibility. For information on that, you contact Elizabeth Sunshine at 917-699-0578 or email sunshine, SUNSHINE @nysidinc.org. We also have openings for our crisis management services directed by Juliet Hawkins. For information, if you have a child, individual needing these kind of services, contact Juliet Hawkins at 917-524-4856 or email jhawkins@nysidinc.org. We also have tickets for venues available for individuals and their families. These are individuals who live within the 4 boroughs of Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, and who are residing at home. And for information, you can call Sarah Alton at 718-494-9424 or email salton@nysidinc.org. We also have transportation, free transportation for medical appointments or recreation activities for individuals and their families. Contact John O'Grady at 917-747-9424 or email John at jogrady@nysidinc.org. These numbers and email contacts I put in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doris. I appreciate it. Chris, is there anybody else who has information?
Pat Lou.
Pat Lou. Hi.
Pat Lou.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. It's Pat from GHO. I'm a Family Support Coordinator. Can everybody see me now?
Don't worry about seeing. Just continue.
Okay. All right. So now we have ongoing opening for Family Support Non-Medicaid Case Management. So this service will help the family who is looking for OPWDD service or who are new. So we will assist them in many different areas. In terms of them will get the eligibility and then eventually get one of the CCO. And for our waiver service, we do have an ongoing opening for our They Have Without Wall, Prevoke, ComHap, and Respite service. And our staff, we have someone speak Korean, Chinese, and we also have staff can do sign language. So if you have any question, referrals, you can call me 718-307-6563. And also we GHO has a contract with CDNY, one of the CCOs. we help the families who speak Chinese or Korean to do their intake and enrollments. Thank you.
Pat?
Yes.
Hold on one second,
Wait, but-
Madam Chair. Hold on, because Rose,
Rose,
Sal,
you there?
no, Rose had. I just want to say because somebody just asked me. Rose Sal had to run to the next meeting, but she
Fine.
did say thank you everyone for being here. Pat
Okay.
and Debbie, please continue, and then after you finish, then we have a
Ursula.
person's hand up.
Okay, Pat, can you please tell me the Chinese dialects? And is it American Sign Language or what? Or is there sign language for dialects in the Chinese or Korean? Thank you. Now,
Sign language for American Sign Language.
and dialects?
Dialects, we have a Cantonese, we have Fuchonese, and we have some other dialect.
How about Mandarin?
Oh, for sure. That's our official language. Yes.
I know that. That's your official
I know
dialect.
you're going to get on me that. Okay.
No, because you know what? All my friends that work out here told me, because I've been at meetings where I've had a Mandarin and a Cantonese and a Fulkanese translator working at the meetings while I was speaking. So I made sure to remember that because I don't want to get yelled at by
Good
any.
memory. Not easy. Thank you. Yes.
It is. You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're
Ursula.
welcome.
Ursula, an announcement.
Okay, yes. Right now I'm not the mom. I'm a family coordinator from Adapt Community Network, and I'll put information about our two webinars. The coming one is tomorrow, and January 13 between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. and it's about the feeding and swallowing delays and disorders. You can email to the Family Connect. I put everything in a chat. It's be translated to Spanish. And we have the other one on February 16 in the same period of the time between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. And it's about the speech and language communication delays issue. And it's again, we have translation into the Spanish, and you can email or you can call in order to register, and you will receive the link to register. Thank you so much, and really again thank you for bringing Chris, and I wish that all the parents will have at least the PowerPoint from him. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year.
And just to answer your question on that, answer that question, as I said before, the recording will be on the website and it will be there available. It will be announced during the end of next week. As I said before, because I said again, the website does get updated starting Friday into Saturday, and then it will be available on the website again. And that means you can copy it at all times and pass it to your families. Because
okay,
this
that means it's again the huge thank you for all the work what you're doing.
Yes. And I just want to make sure it's clear on the record. So it's duty noted. Care Design, do you have an announcement?
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year to all. No, I don't have an announcement other than like last month that I mentioned.
You mean last year? I like the first one.
What happened?
I like when you said last year. That's correct.
December, yeah. Yeah, other than that we have moved, relocated. We're all now for the Brooklyn region at One Metro Tech, and we're still working remotely.
So where is Ernie McNutt? That's the question everybody's been asking me this.
He will be in the Manhattan office.
Am I guessing he's back where he started with HRC in the same building?
Not the same building, same street, actually. Yeah, not the same building.
Same street, still the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just remind your rest of your staff, please, to remind them to please use the website, because it would be nice to, if they want to find out when the meetings are, they're available on the website and email, because on the advisory it does get updated.
Can you include the website when you're sending the links? Because the way the invitations are sent is with a picture. Maybe we have a link to those recordings too.
Last
So I can
time I
forward it
put
to
that
people?
link, last time, just to let everyone know, last time I put that link, people complained when I did the link.
Okay. Okay. I'll
That's
find it.
why there's a
Then.
reason. That's why there is a link that is available on then when you get a message, number one. And number two, to make everyone laugh, it is ADA accessible when you just type in the BFSSAC. All of a sudden, you click on that, bam, it's everywhere like toilet paper. So
We have
everyone's
to
like,
change the website address. So it's still, because I can pull it up on my cell phone, www.bfssac.com. Hasn't, if you know our email, you just leave out Yahoo and you got it. Okay?
Got it.
And please tell the rest of your staff, all of them, I don't care if they're assigned to other boroughs. Remember, they have families whose children may go to school in another borough but live in Brooklyn. So everybody needs to get updated on everything because there's always constant changes with OPWD and family support. Okay?
Correct. Thank
We're
you.
trying to keep you all updated.
Thank
Okay?
you.
and just
You're
let
welcome.
everyone know that the website's logo has been updated. That's why you see my camera off for a reason. It has the Brooklyn Bridge. Because we are Brooklyn. It's small
not
here,
on
but it's
now.
available on the website a little bigger.
Oh, there it is. It's
Yeah.
tiny. I can't see.
Well, I don't make it tiny.
I'm an old lady. What can I say?
I don't. Let's move on then. The other person was Razia, which she had to run to her fourth meeting, but she wants to wish everyone a happy New Year. And she just said, that's all I know she just said to me. So therefore, that was the last announcement. Everyone, we hope to see you guys at the meeting for the next provider information is, the second Wednesday. That will be sent out. The next joint meeting, I'm going to pop up my other screen. So therefore, I have it here because I know I didn't mention meetings, dates, because we got a lot of interfering screen systems. But either way, the next meeting date for the joint meeting is January 26th, which is a Wednesday. And to remind everyone that code is available on A, the website, B, it will be on the advisory council's website link. So therefore, you can get on there and get the code. But I like to remind everyone, please update your systems again. Always make sure, because lately we've been getting viruses and we don't want to see viruses coming in, or people like to not have very good signal system. Now, please be careful because I do track Wi-Fi signals in the areas here as well. So since Rose has left, she has said, thank you everyone for being here. Deborah, you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you everybody who stayed. Doris, you have one more thing you want to say? Go
This
ahead.
question's for you, Deborah. You brought up something I want to just clarify for myself. If a
Yes.
child lives in a residence in Manhattan, but goes to a day hab in the Bronx, are they under the region,
Manhattan.
the OPD?
Manhattan.
They're where they live.
Right, where they live.
Where they live, because the DOE is
But
different.
remember, when they're residential, it's not family support. So I don't have any. I can advocate if the family asks.
No, I just
but
wanted to clarify. So they would
No,
go
I'm
where
talking
they
about
live.
School.
But it's where they
What I was bringing up is District 75 is citywide. So I could put my child in a citywide program. I live in Brooklyn, and they put him in the Bronx. Well, I'm tending the advisory council in Brooklyn because that's where I'm zoned to get services. When it comes to them living in residence, they're no longer with the family, so the parent can go to any of the DD councils they want to. But they most likely may tell them, well, where's your child? So like say you said the child is in Manhattan, I would tell them to go to the Manhattan DD Council.
Right, so it's where they
even though they have them
okay.
in the Bronx, because it's where the child's residence is.
But if they're District 75, then they would go where they live.
District 75 is this way. If you live
in Brooklyn,
all
you're
right,
going to a school
I
in the
live in
Bronx.
Brooklyn. The child lives with me in Brooklyn. That's my home district, because even the Department of Ed will say Brooklyn is my home zone. And I tell the families, come to the Brooklyn councils, okay? If they live in Staten Island, the family, their child goes into Brooklyn, it's Staten Island. But anybody's allowed to go to any of these meetings. That's the thing. They can. I don't stop
Yeah, but,
anybody.
you know,
Any borough. You want to go to any borough? Come. It's no problem. I have parents from the Bronx, Queens, Manhattan, and I've had Staten Island parents, and who want to know what's going on also here. So I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any? Well, I thank everybody who stayed longer. But yes, we will have Chris Trieber back another time. We will set it up. Please tell everybody at Care Design we said hello. And Adapt, we know you're still here. Please send my regards to everybody at NICET, and good to see you. With that, since I don't know who else is on, but I'm going to say, Chris, time for us to all say
See you
goodbye.
on the 26th.
Please see you on the 26th. Thank you. Take care. Bye.